I try to live my life without any regrets. I mean, other than my lower back tattoo and my dicey choice of hairstyles over the years, I don't really have a lower back tattoo. I'm just kidding. Or am I? All right, but seriously, I feel like I've scooted through life without many regrets over the years. But I do want to tell you about some of the regrets I have about moving to North Georgia a few years ago, or actually quite a few years ago in 1999. So without further ado, let's talk about the 5 reasons why I regret moving to North Georgia. Hey everybody, my name is Tim Gibson, and no, I don't have a lower back tattoo. I am a real estate agent in North Georgia, and you might have guessed it, my channel is all about North Georgia real estate, not back tattoos. So please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, if you are thinking about moving to the area or you're just curious about North Georgia, please just reach out. My contact info is right here on the screen. And without further ado, let's talk about some regrets. All right, some of these regrets are gonna sound kind of dumb to you guys, but these are kind of something that I've thought about over the years. And number one, I grew up in Florida. I grew up maybe 5 to 10 minutes from the beach. And so my number one regret is that North Georgia doesn't have a beach. Could I have moved somewhere else? Yes, absolutely. But Atlanta is where I kind of moved to, and then ended up gravitating towards North Georgia. And you know, if you want to get to the beach in less than about 6 hours or so, you really can't do that if you live in North Georgia. You know, growing up in high school, I could be on the beach, surfing, hanging out with friends, doing whatever, in, like I said, about 5 to 10 minutes. Now that I live in North Georgia, the closest beach to where I live would probably be Hilton Head. And on the screen, you'll see a quick map of Hilton Head and the distance from the Atlanta area in North Georgia. So when I want to take the family to the beach, and our family loves the beach, we go to the beach at least once or twice a year, we've got to get in the car and we got to drive at least 5 to 6 hours. So if you live in North Georgia, most people that do go to the beach, they go to places like Hilton Head, North Carolina, they go to St. Simon's Island in Georgia, Jekyll Island in Georgia, they go to Northeast Florida like Jacksonville Beach or St. Augustine. And probably the most popular beach for anyone to go to around the Atlanta or North Georgia area is a little section of the coastline in Florida called 30A. You've probably heard of it. It's just west of Panama City Beach, Florida. It has all these cool little towns like Seaside, Rosemary Beach. It's an unbelievable place to go visit. But if you live where I live, you got to drive about 7.5 hours, maybe even 8 hours with stops and traffic to get to the beach. And yeah, so that's my number one regret. You know, living in North Georgia, you can't get to the beach in a very short amount of time. So my number 2 regret of living in North Georgia is getting used to a slower pace of life. You might say, well, you know, you live in North Georgia, you're close enough to Atlanta and everybody drives like a maniac down there. Yes, everyone does drive like a maniac in Atlanta or around Atlanta, but where I live, everything is pretty slow. I grew up in a larger city in the suburbs where everybody drove kind of crazy. The roads are flat and straight down in Florida, so everybody just gets on the highway and just goes nuts. Here in North Georgia, the roads are windy. You could drive off a cliff if you're not paying attention, if it gets foggy, something like that. And you know, everybody drives a little slower, so I got to get used to that. Also, for the most part, everyone in North Georgia that I meet or have met or been around, they just tend to operate on a little bit slower timeline, which is really awesome once you get used to it. But yeah, a lot of times people aren't in as much of a hurry. They're not just trying to rush off and get to the next thing. And it's actually kind of a good thing where people just want to spend a little bit more quality time with each other. They're not in a hurry to just get you out of a conversation so they can get on to the next thing. It's actually kind of awesome. And there are really a lot of places in North Georgia that are like Mayberry. So if you're familiar with the Andy Griffith Show, Mayberry's a little town, it's a little fictional town, and everybody knows each other, everybody waves to each other, everybody's nice, and that's actually kind of a cool thing. But it's just something that, you know, it was just a little tough for me to get used to. Think about the classic picture of someone, 2 people sitting in rocking chairs on the front porch, drinking sweet tea, having a conversation, not a care in the world. That's kind of what I'm talking about with the slower pace of life in North Georgia. So I'm gonna just keep talking about this, but like I mentioned, I grew up in Florida, and it's the Sunshine State. There weren't a whole lot of gloomy days in Florida. When it rained, it didn't rain for that long, maybe 30 minutes at a time in the summer. And in the wintertime, it really wasn't that bad. It was always pretty mild. I remember being a kid, playing with Christmas presents outside on Christmas Day in shorts and a t-shirt many times as a kid. So it was a little bit of a shock to me when I moved up to North Georgia and I got to experience winter here. Winter in North Georgia, obviously it's not nearly as bad as places, you know, up north where you get a lot of snow, you get a lot of just nasty weather. But the difference here, at least compared to Florida, is that it gets cloudy late December, early January, and you just have a lot of gloomy, rainy days. It's not usually cold enough for snow here. It's just kind of gloomy and cold a lot of the wintertime here. A very typical day in North Georgia in the wintertime is like 38 degrees, you got cold rain, and it's just kind of gloomy. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you've heard me talk about the 12 seasons of Georgia. That is pretty much real. I'm not gonna get into all of the 12 seasons here, but just go watch any of my other videos and you'll probably see me talk about it. But just within the last 3 weeks or so, the weather in North Georgia, which is pretty abnormal, we got down to like multiple days of 7, 8, 9 degrees. And then after those very cold days, we had, I don't know, like a week of just solid rain where it just rained nonstop and it was like 38, 39 degrees outside. And I'm sitting in, you know, the middle of February in 2024, and it's been 65 degrees for like 3 or 4 days this week. So all that to say, you get a little bit of whiplash with the weather here sometimes, and especially if you're coming from some place like Florida, you know, you got sun all the time, where here you don't get it so much, but you also do have a decent change of seasons here. All right, number 4 reason why I regret moving to North Georgia, driving distance. All right, so take a look at this map on the screen here. You can see that obviously North Georgia basically covers the top third or the northern third of the state. So if you live in a small town, most of the towns here are very small with, you know, 5,000, 10,000 people. Some counties have 10,000 people up here. So needless to say, you might have to drive to get to some of the things you want to do. Sometimes you got to drive just to get to a grocery store, or sometimes if you want to go shopping or whatever, if you like to go shopping, you got to drive 30 minutes. That is kind of the norm up here. Some people love that, and that's great. You know, they don't want a lot of the chain restaurants, and they don't want a lot of the shopping malls and the strip malls and stuff like that. So naturally, if you want to live in a place that's a little bit more rural, a little bit more natural beauty, you do have to drive, and sometimes you got to drive a long distance. And the way I can kind of sum it up to you is that just basically everything that is a major attraction or, you know, something that you want to do is about an hour drive away. All right, so let's say you live in a little town in North Georgia like Blairsville, Georgia, for instance. Beautiful place to live, really pretty. There's a lot of natural beauty out there. But also, let's say you're an Atlanta Braves fan and you want to go check out a Braves game. The Atlanta Braves are located just outside of Atlanta on the northwest side of town. It's in Cobb County. And it's about, you know, 15, 20 minutes outside of Atlanta. So coming from Blairsville, you're going to have to drive to, obviously, to get down to the Braves Stadium at Truist Park. And it's about a 2-hour drive from Blairsville. So, you know, not that big of a deal. It is a long trip, but hey, you do have to factor that type of stuff in if you like to do those type of activities all the time. Or let's say you want to drive to the airport. You've got a trip coming up. Maybe you're going on a cruise, going on a vacation, going to see some family. If you're coming from a place like Blairsville, you're going to have to drive even further than 2 hours to get to the airport. The Atlanta Hartsfield Airport is south of Atlanta. So you're going to have to drive all the way down into Atlanta, maybe around 285 to get to the airport. You might be driving 2 hours just to get to the airport. Yeah, so that's just a quick example just to show you like, hey, you know, North Georgia is close to Atlanta, but you do have to drive for some of those more popular amenities. Okay, my last regret for moving to North Georgia is the lack of infrastructure. What do I mean by that? Okay, lack of infrastructure looks like this. Say you live in, you know, Southern California, you live in a larger city like, you know, someplace like Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, whatever. And you're used to things like public transit. You're used to things like, oh, you have, you know, municipal trash pickup or city trash pickup. Or, you know, public sewer, public water, great internet coverage everywhere you go. Well, all of that does not necessarily exist in all of the towns in North Georgia. You know, unless you live really close to a town center like Dahlonega or one of these little towns, you got to live pretty close to have things like public sewer, public water, and, you know, public trash pickup. For the people who live outside of the town centers, maybe you're out in the country a little bit, you're just out in the county away from one of the town centers, you're going to have to be on a well, you're going to have to be on a septic system more than likely, and you're going to have to find some other third-party service to pick up your trash and take it to the dump for you. It's really not that big of a deal, but it is something to get used to. So if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia, you know, just keep that in mind. Also, I've mentioned this in just about every single video ever, it's the lack of internet infrastructure. I've probably beat this like a dead horse, but you know, some places it's getting a lot better, like Dahlonega. They just rolled out a $20 million internet infrastructure bill, and the internet connection in Dahlonega, they're running fiber all over the place. It's getting a lot better. I mentioned this in one of my past Dahlonega videos, but I was on like Stone Age internet, like the worst possible internet connection of all time for like 17 years. And when I say Stone Age internet, I'm talking like, think about AOL dial-up internet in the 90s. You were excited to get on the internet and it took like 5 minutes for a web page to load. That's what I'm talking about. And no, I'm not exaggerating. I would routinely have to just leave my house and go sit in front of any place that had public internet, in my car, my truck, whatever, and get on the internet to send any kind of files or do anything just about. But that is getting better. Infrastructure is getting better. You know, these cities are going, these towns are going. Some people don't like it if you're from some of these towns. Some people do, especially if you are coming from somewhere else. I'll let you guys argue over that in the comments. But yeah, you know, lack of infrastructure, that is a big deal. You know, you want to have some of the modern amenities of life, but maybe you want to live out in the country. Just keep all that in mind if you're thinking about moving to the area. All right, so if you're thinking about North Georgia as a potential place to live, this video hopefully did not scare you away, and it really wasn't designed to scare anybody away. It's more to give you a clear picture of what it would be like to live here if you were to choose to move here from some place that's got a little bit more modern amenities, a little bit more infrastructure, that whole deal. All right, so if you are thinking about moving to North Georgia, you're considering the area, please reach out. I would be more than happy to help. My contact info is right here on the screen. All right, so what did you think about the video? Did you like it? Hate it? What do you think about these regrets? Do you have any regrets if you moved to North Georgia recently? Leave me a comment below and we will see you on the next video. Have a great day.